The ceasefire between Israel and Hamas is a huge relief. It does not resolve the future relationship between Israelis and Palestinians, and it does not address the root cause that makes that relationship so difficult and so dangerous. But it provides a breathing space. 12 Israelis and more than 200 Palestinians have been killed in the last 2 weeks. The ceasefire means that, thank God, those numbers will stop growing. It means that Israeli citizens can live with less fear of rocket attacks. It means that doctors in Gaza can work with less fear about diverting scarce resources away from COVID patients towards the victims of bombing. A breathing space. A breathing space in a conflict that has distorted the life of the Holy Land and its peoples for decades. An opportunity to reflect upon the conflict, yes. An opportunity to grow out of it a lasting peace, maybe. I feel, and I suspect I sound, pessimistic about that. We have been here before, repeatedly. The immediate crisis passes, an uneasy truce resumes, and life continues until the next crisis and the next round of bloodletting. The life of the Holy Land is of compelling interest to Christians. Jesus was born as one of its people. It is the place that he knew and the place over which he wept. Of course, its peace and happiness concern us. Not that the peace and happiness of other places don't. The treatment of the Rohingyas of Myanmar and the Uyghurs of China is constantly, daily before us. Here at Salisbury Cathedral, we pray every month for a prisoner of conscience held in one of the world's jails. But the Holy Land necessarily has a particular claim on our hearts. While Christian and Muslim and Jew cannot live alongside one another in peace and with security for all in the very place that gave birth to those faiths, while the competing claims of soil and blood cannot be resolved without the drenching of one with the other, while the human soul as well as the human body is torn apart by explosive devices and explosive rhetoric in the very land where Jesus died and was raised, it is difficult to be optimistic. It is difficult to be optimistic about the reconciliation that Christians believe is God's ultimate will and ultimate purpose for the people he has made and whom he loves. reconciliation is always costly because it demands honesty of those who seek it. And the Israel-Palestine conflict has deep and tangled roots. Honesty about the historic persecution of the Jews in which Christian faith has played a shameful part. Honesty about the occupation of the Palestinian territories. Honesty about the continuing plight of Palestinian refugees. Honesty about the reality, the disgraceful reality of anti-Semitism. It would be easy to make tokenistic gestures about a complex historical situation from the comfortable safety of Wiltshire. It would be easy to make portentous declarations about it. I don't want to do either of those. But I believe we must pray for the peace of Jerusalem, as Jesus would have done when he prayed the Psalms. I believe we have no choice about that. And because we pray for peace, we must pray for reconciliation. Pray without ceasing, urges St. Paul. Pray without ceasing. If our prayers are not to become the very worst sort of virtue signalling, then you and I who pray must live the reconciliation that we pray for. Being honest and seeking honesty. Looking for the good, or rather looking for the God in everyone, particularly in those we find most difficult and challenging. To pray is not to pose. It is to allow God's will to be done in us, on earth, as in heaven. May God bless all his people. Have a good evening and a good weekend.